First question, how did you get involved with the Maniac Cop series exactly?
I was in New York, actually closing down my apartment, and I got a call from Larry Cohen, who had just left the movie, and we had lunch together. And during the lunch, Larry asked me if why I never made a sequel to Maniac. And I told him, I really hadn't, thought about doing a sequel. I kind of felt the movie kind of ended, and that was that. And he said, well, what do you think about the idea of Maniac Cop? And the very moment he said the title Maniac Cop, I knew it was a winning title, and I knew it was a winning concept. And that was it. It was Larry Cohen's idea, and from there it snowballed.
Mm-hmm. And did you accept immediately to direct it? Before the writing of the script, or?
Well, I was direct. It was always Larry's idea and my idea that Larry would write it and I would direct it, and so we were a team from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. A good team. And how is it to work with Larry Cohen exactly? Because this guy is at the same time producer, scriptwriter, sometimes director.
I learned more about the film business working with Larry Cohen than anyone before or after. Larry is a genius. He is the best idea man I've ever met in my life. He's somebody who comes up with Larry. I'll tell you the key to Larry. Larry works best under pressure. Give Larry a week to do something, and he's not as good as if you give him 1 hour. And that's the key to Larry Cohen. He is a guy who is just a quick thinker, and just really a brilliant idea man. And I really respect him. I always loved his work before we, from afar, before we got together. I always admired Larry Cohen's work, and he's amazing.
What did you learn exactly with Larry Cohen?
What I learned from Larry Cohen was how to think pragmatically, meaning how to find simple solutions in solving problems. We're in a business that tends to want to make things more complicated than what they are. Larry's idea is, what is it that we have to accomplish, and how do we find the simplest, easiest solution to solving or getting what it is we want on screen. And that's the key to that was one of the things. Larry, and also the thing about Larry is he doesn't believe in the traditions of filmmaking. He looks at it that you need a camera, you need a film, you need somebody maybe to operate the camera, you need somebody to operate the sound, and we can run out and we can shoot it. We don't need, changing rooms, and we don't need to have a big production around us. We can work out of our station wagon and get things done. So that was Larry. He always knew. He got me to be thinking in his practical way. I think I would call it the Larry School of practical filmmaking, as opposed to the Hollywood filmmaking.
It was a long process, or maybe a simple process, to find the money to make the first Maniac Cop?
Actually, the process of making Maniac Cop went very quickly. Larry and I, as I said earlier, Larry and I met for lunch. It was in February, and we already started shooting the St. Patrick's Day parade sequences in March, by mid-March. In fact, I called up Bruce Campbell and I said, Bruce, I'm making a movie with Larry Cohen called Maniac Cop, and I want you to, I don't have a script, but I want you to fly to New York, wear clothes that we can duplicate, and we'll figure out what to do from there. And Bruce went along with it. We flew him to New York, and we had him running around the parade, and we had no idea what the script was going to be. And we took that footage, and Larry went ahead and wrote the rest of the script, what happens before and after. And we went to a company, and they agreed to finance the movie.
Very simple.
Yeah, and we were shooting the film in August. So within 6 months, we made the picture. Actually, everything I've ever done with Larry has always been quick. You know, we tend to get these things done quickly.
How long it was to find the fine actors, the fine actor to play the Maniac cop exactly, Robert Zidar?
The casting of the Maniac cop was that's where Larry and I had slightly different a different take on it. I had seen a movie called Night Stalker, not the one, the Darren McGavin famous Night Stalker, but there was kind of a cop chasing a serial killer movie called Night Stalker. And there was the guy who was playing the killer, who I thought was really, really frightening looking, and that was Robert Zidar. And Larry said Larry wanted to get somebody who was more of a dancer, somebody who moved better, more fluid with the body. And, you know, so that Larry and I sort of had a little bit of a creative conflict about that. I won out because we couldn't really find anybody that fit what Larry had in his mind. And we were pressed to start shooting the movie. And we needed to do the casting, and so we wound up with Robert Zidar. I must tell you that the first time I met Robert Zidar, and I was waiting for him at my office to arrive, I was getting very anxious because he had made such an impression on me in that movie that I became rather anxious about meeting this guy.
And how did you imagine the makeup of the Maniac cop exactly, the look of the Maniac cop?
The makeup for the Maniac cop was never really solidified. We had a very short pre-production period in doing the first Maniac cop, and even the second Maniac cop, very short pre-production period. And we didn't have, I felt, enough time to really fine-tune the makeup for the Maniac cop. So it always kind of changed. It certainly changed from Maniac Cop 1 to Maniac Cop 2, but even while, if you look at the movies carefully, especially in 1, the makeup kind of changes even within 1. And that was something that was I thought one of the flaws of the movie, of the series, that we never really solidified the makeup.
That's why the actor is in the shadow.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. No, we put, for the vast part of Maniac Cop 1, we put the character in shadow deliberately to cover up what we hadn't really decided on.
But I think it's more frightening.
I've always found what you don't see is more frightening than what you do see. Yeah.
Mm. How did you imagine the look of the movie, the images? I think this movie is at the same time very close with Maniac, and in the same very close with the French Connection too. The same kind of images, very very gritty.
Well, actually, you must have read an interview that I've read. Actually, what my concept of Maniac Cop was, Frankenstein meets the French Connection. That was our thinking of the film. We were going to make the first horror police thriller, and so we shot the film. The exteriors, in particular, most of the exteriors were shot in New York City, and I always love shooting there. It gives the film a look that's very, very distinctive. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why the film has the look of Maniac and some of the famous New York filmed movies.
Yes, I think the real monster of the movie, or the two movies, is New York, in a way, the city. Because the city is so dark, so scary.
Well, New York City lends itself to kind of a film noir look. New York is one of the most beautiful and frightening cities at the same time at night.
Yes. And about the monster, this boogeyman, do you think the Maniac Cop is very close with boogeyman like Freddy Krueger, Jason, or do you think it's the same kind of bad guys, or the same kind of a monster, or not?
What I tried to avoid in Maniac Cop, and Larry and I both agreed, that we weren't going to make a sarcastic character. In other words, when you look at Freddy, or you look at some of these, Jason, these characters sort of became comical, and we always aimed not to make the Maniac cop comical. I mean, there could be funny things with other characters or humorous situations with other characters, but we never wanted the Maniac cop character to ever be a wisecracking, monster. Because I felt once you do that, it's over.
How difficult is it for the actors to work on a movie like that? So fast to do, so quick to do.
I think some actors really work best when they know they have a very brief time to get a scene made, because they have to be better prepared. And fortunately, I would say most, if not all, the actors who worked on the Maniac cop films really loved the script and were, had prepared for their roles. So when we were shooting, we never had to wait on the actors. They were always there, prepared, knew what they had to do, and so really it was a really good experience. I think it becomes difficult to shoot fast if you don't have a script that's really fine, put together well. If you have a script that is everybody has to think about it and has to make changes, and you're always you're insecure about it, I think that's what causes a lot of time to be wasted. But with the Maniac Cop 1 and 2, we had a very good script to work with, so it was easy to work fast.
Did you change some details, some dialogues to the script of Larry Cohen, or is it the two movies are exactly the script?
I have to believe we changed some dialogue of Larry, but I would say for the most part, no. But people and actors always wind up changing some of the lines to fit their mouths. We never changed the scenes, but I could see where we might have changed a line or two or reworded something because it made it flow better for the actor to read it.
Mm-hmm. What are the differences between Maniac Cop 1 and Maniac Cop 2?
I think Maniac Cop 1 was a tight little B movie, which I think really worked well, but it was kind of a little B movie. I think what Maniac Cop 2 is, we took what was what was good about Maniac Cop 1 and it was amplified. I'll tell you a very interesting story. Everybody knows that sequels usually are never as good as the first films. I mean, it's a given that when a sequel is made, it's never as good as the first movie. Larry called me up. He said he wrote the script for Maniac Cop 2. I was really kind of hesitant about doing a sequel. I had mixed feelings about it. Creatively, I was kind of hesitant, but from a business standpoint, it was a financially lucrative thing for us to do a sequel to it. I went to Larry's home, picked up the script, drove back to I was driving back to my home, and I was stuck in traffic, and I began reading the script while I was in traffic. And I was so impressed with the first 10 pages of the script that I immediately, when I got home, picked up the phone to Larry and said, "Larry, you're a genius. This is incredible. I mean, if the script is, continues to be as good as these first, 10 or so pages," I said, we got a winner here. And when I finished the script, I really was excited about doing the sequel. I really lost all trepidations and just, plunged into it with my heart and soul, saying we're going to make a sequel that's going to be as good, if not better, than the original movie. And so what I tried to do was to make a Maniac Cop film as if Joel Silver was making the movie. And tried to make it so it was slam bang and it was nonstop and we had tons of action and we had a pace to the movie that I thought was a faster pace than the first movie. And that was it. And I just, it was the hardest work I've ever done in my life was Maniac Cop 2. But it was rewarding. It was hard work because the focus was on the work. It was a great experience making that film. It was a great accomplishment too, I think, too, to make that film.
Yes, but a big challenge too, because this movie is a very huge movie made with a medium or small budget.
Yeah, it was. We were really ambitious with the budget we had on Maniac Cop 2, and I'm really proud of what came out of it. It was a really rewarding experience.
Mhm. Do you think small budget are very good for imagination, to use your imagination?
I think a budget does not correlate to imagination. I think imagination, I mean, I've seen some huge movies, and I've seen some recently that they could have used more imagination and less money. I don't think there's any, you can't put a value on imagination. I think that, you know, it really comes down to the script. And Larry is, as I said before, is a great script writer.
Mhm. In Maniac 2, the monster is more human. It was your intention to transform a little bit the monster character?
I don't know if it was in Larry's, I don't know if this was in Larry's subconscious or conscious or whatever. When I worked on Maniac Cop 2, one of the things I thought a lot about was Son of Frankenstein. It was the third in the Frankenstein movies. It's the one where Bela Lugosi played Igor. And what I tried to do in Maniac Cop 2, in a totally different setting, was to create the Igor-Frankenstein relationship between the monster and the serial killer. In fact, I even had the serial killer grow a beard, a bushy beard, similar to what Bela Lugosi had in Son of Frankenstein. And in the place, the lair where the Maniac Cop resides, I even had the art department create those kind of German architecture with those archways and stuff behind him and all that, you know, all that kind of stuff to make it look like Son of Frankenstein. You know, the brick and all that stuff that you would see in those gothic Universal horror movies.
Did you use a lot of references like Son of Frankenstein in the two Maniac Cops?
It was only on the reference to Son of Frankenstein was only in Maniac Cop 2, not in Maniac Cop 1.
Mm. But did you use a lot of references except this movie, or
it was
private jokes maybe, or
there were some in my mind there were some references to Son of Frankenstein, in that you had the serial killer who was using the monster to accomplish what he himself could not accomplish. And so that was what I kind of thought was the wink to Son of Frankenstein. Even the way the serial killer talks to the monster, and as the monster is walking, it reminded me a lot of the way Bela Lugosi would talk to Boris Karloff.
Do you think the two Maniac Cops are typical of the ending of the 80s in the matter of horror movies?
I just don't. I personally don't think horror films have ever ended. I think that what I'm proudest about with the Maniac Cop movies is I think they were I felt that for films that were intended for video, they were made with a great deal of integrity and imagination. I know Larry and I cared very much for these movies. And what I began to see a little bit in the 80s, but mostly in the 90s, is a lot of the straight-to-video genre movies seemed to be made by people who didn't really care about making a good genre movie. Larry and I cared a great deal about what we did when we made this movie, and I'm very proud of it. Whether or not it was the last or the two last great horror movies of the 80s, that I couldn't tell you. But I mean, I just really think there were films that I'm proud of, and films that I'm not embarrassed to, you know, for people to see them today, because I know we really cared and we put a great deal of effort into them.
Mm-hmm. What's happened on Maniac Cop 3 exactly? Could you tell us the story?
Sure. Maniac Cop 2 was very successful, and but the company that financed the film sold its rights to another company called Overseas Film Group. And what happened was the control of the movie was taken, although Larry and I were hired to do what we hoped they wanted us to do, which was to make the movie. In fact, we were hired just so they could put our names on pre-sales so they could get the film financed. It really was a situation where they didn't understand where Larry and I were coming from, and we didn't really understand where they were coming from. And so instead of making a movie, it was just a situation of people having clashes, you know. And I think they would have been better served, quite frankly, had they just given Larry and I the budget and left us alone to go make the movie that we wanted to make, which would have been a pretty good movie, I think. It wouldn't have been, I don't know if it was a great movie, but I think it would have been a reasonably good movie. But what Maniac Cop 3 became, and we knew it was becoming, was really a mess. It was just a mess because it didn't have any cohesive story. It didn't, you know, it didn't have, the other thing that was, I think, happened with Maniac Cop 3 is the people financing it wanted everything to be like a copy of the first of the second picture, instead of what we tried to do is to try to bring new characters, more situations that were different than the second picture. And it just was, it just didn't work. I mean, Larry left the movie before we ever shot, and I left the movie after 4 weeks of shooting.
If a producer asks you to do a new Maniac Cop now, presently, do you think you will be okay to do the movie or not?
Well, Larry and I, it's funny enough, Larry and I, after this horrible experience on Maniac Cop 3, we actually sat around and we said, it would be kind of fun to make another Maniac Cop movie. I don't know. I mean, I have mixed feelings about it. If the script was really good, probably. But at the same time, I kind of feel like we've done it, and we've done it well, and maybe it's just better we just leave it alone. Maybe it's, one of those things we should just let sleeping, let it sleep, We did what we did. I'm proud of the movies. I wish 3 had been a better film. But I think 2 out of 3 is not bad in anybody's career.
Yes. What is your best memory on the Maniac Cop series exactly? The first day of shooting, the last day of shooting, I don't know.
Well, one of my favorite memories is Larry only visited the set one day on Maniac Cop 1. And we were shooting a scene. It was just a transition scene, but it had Bruce Campbell, who was running out of a police station after having found the massacre of all the cops in the police station, and he confronts 2 uniformed police officers, and he has a gun on them, and he tells them to get down on the floor and lie there on the floor with their faces down while he escapes out of the police station. A very brief scene. While I was shooting it, Larry whispers in my ear, when the camera pans down to the cops, don't cut. Let it roll for a little while. I'm going, okay, why is he having me do this? So, okay, we shoot it. I do what Larry, has suggested I do. And I said, okay, Larry, now why did I just do that? He said, well, when Bruce is telling them, I didn't do it, we can put these lines on the cops, and then he gives me the dialogue for it, and later on, if you see when you see the finished film, that's Larry's voice and my voice, doing the dubbing for the 2 cops that are on the floor. It's one of my favorite. That's typical Larry. I mean, he just thinks very quick, and he's somebody who's fast and thinks quick, and that's one of the great experiences of making the film. What I remember most about Maniac Cop 2 is I don't think I've ever been as cold in my life as I was doing the exterior scenes on Maniac Cop 2. Anytime I'm in cold weather, I'm always thinking about Maniac Cop 2 because that was as cold as as cold as an experience as I've ever been through.
Is it your worst memory on the series?
Well, it's funny enough, the fact that it was freezing cold, and it was really a challenge shooting all those New York exteriors on the movie, made it actually kind of a fun experience because I think sometimes when you go through something as difficult and as challenging as what we went through on that movie, it makes for very good memories. It doesn't at the time make you think that you're ever going to look back at this fondly, but when you look back later, you say, "Oh, you know, we did it. We accomplished it. We got done what we had to do, and you know, we didn't crack up, and we survived."
Yes. On your real worst memory, what is it on the maybe on the two first movies, of course? Maybe a makeup, maybe a special effects, maybe a stunt. I don't know.
Well, God, I mean, you know, well, if I had to say on Maniac Cop 2, what my worst memory was, and I don't want to, it shouldn't really say anything, but, well, what the hell. I guess my worst memory on Maniac Cop 2, which wasn't that terrible, was the difficulty I had with the leading actress, Claudia Christian. Yeah, she was, she kind of was a negative, you know. She didn't kind of come in, she didn't kind of join the spirit of everybody else in the making of the film. We always had to accommodate her, and, you know, she was very, you know, very typical, you know, kind of high maintenance actress, and that was one of the things that was kind of negative about it, you know. But really, that's as much negative as I could think of. I mean, everybody else was wonderful. Mm-hmm. You know, we had a great time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think shooting the two first Maniac Cops was a kind of a family reunion. Is it true, or?
Well, I will tell you the great part about making the two Maniac Cop films. I remember when we were doing Maniac Cop 1, again, my memories are so vivid about this, is I remember we had the whole crew at this hotel, and they all sort of like found their way into my room. You know, we all were crowded into my room at this hotel, going over like the production. And I remember we had pizza boxes around the room, and you know, everybody was like there to make a movie. And it was so much fun. It really was a team where there were no egos. Everybody was there to do the best. And we just had a really good time. There was a lot of laughs. I remember having a lot of laughs. And the same with Cop 2. I mean, as difficult as shooting that film was, it wasn't without the feeling that we were all aiming to make the best movie. What I find difficult about filmmaking is when the hard work is not about the work. It's about the politics. It's about the actors going crazy on you and egos and, you know, all kinds of stuff. That's unfortunately happens quite often in this business, and but we didn't have much of that on the two Maniac Cop pictures, Maniac Cop 1 and 2, and that's why I think they turned out as good as they did.
How difficult is it to okay, last question. How difficult is it to find the good combination between horror and humor exactly? I think it's a very dangerous, risky game.
Well, I mean, I think horror and humor are two sides of the same coin. I mean, if you go in and you say boo to a baby, the baby will react first to the scare and then start giggling. And I think that, you know, we're all grown-up babies watching these horror films. And I think that having humor, not comedy, but humor in a horror film is very important to relieving the tension and to making it an enjoyable experience.